Hi, I'm Justin Harry, and today I'd like to discuss two of my local fishing lakes that have steadily seen a decline in their productivity due to the lack of game fish and parks involvement. I created this speech to create awareness not only through the internet, but also I would like to use it to send to game fish and parks and give them an idea that locals do care about these lakes and that something could be done to increase their futures. So to start it off, I'm going to tell you pretty much. I'm going to tell you about the two lakes, Amsden Dam and Piggers Lake. I'm going to give you the history of Amsden, the past, and then the present of Amsden, and then I'll also give you the past, present of Piggers. After I discuss those things, I would like to move on and talk to you about the futures of these lakes and how we could make them a better lake. So to start it off, I'm going to start with Amsden Dam. The history of Amsden Dam is it's very it's not really well known. There's not a lot of information, but what we do know is it was created back in 1936 and funded by the WPA. It was an awesome opportunity. It created jobs for the farmers and the locals because the locals were paid to build it, and then once it was built, it held water back from local farmland, and this allowed farmers to actually make more money in the area due to the land not being flooded anymore. And so that's kind of a brief reason why it was made. Um, One of the first things about Amsden, there was a tragedy back in 1937. 6 people drowned, a year after the lake was made. Back then, a lot of people didn't know how to swim, and there was a small family having a picnic, and they went out into the water, and there was a drop off, and people started falling into the drop off, didn't know how to swim, and one by one they drowned each other. Is really what happened. It's a very sad story. Um, in its past, Amsden was known as Northeast South Dakota's one of the prime fishing lakes. Awesome species of fish to fish from, just an awesome lake. Um, the lake offered beautiful scenery and campgrounds for multiple families and, vacations, stuff like that. It was an awesome place to go to for locals. It wasn't far, plenty of opportunity. Um, in the past, the lake had multiple species of fish. I mean, multiples from walleye to perch, bullhead, rock bass, largemouth bass, lake trout, catfish. I mean, you name a freshwater fish, chances are it was in this lake in its past. Um, Another cool thing about Amsden, it was one of the only lakes to ever have muskie in it. The only place you could catch muskie in the past was Amsden Dam and the Missouri River, so it was a good trophy lake for muskie, and a lot of people sought after the muskie in this lake. A lot of these species of fish that were mentioned, they did fail in this lake. Lake trout, they couldn't survive in there. There was nowhere to spawn and reproduce. I don't know why they ever put them in there. It didn't work. Catfish was another one. Same thing. Not places to spawn or reproduce. They died off within a year. In the 1970s, game fish and parks finally started getting more involved in this lake. They made the lake a state park, fixed up the campgrounds a lot nicer than they were, and stuff like that. Another awesome thing in the past was a group called Feather and Fin, which was like a local fishing group, and what they would do is they would hold tournaments, and at the end of the year they'd also have like a biggest fish contest and stuff like that, and they would use it for Amsden, and the winners would get paid for the biggest fish and such, but the money made from tournaments was used to reproduce fish in the lake, which was an awesome program, which unfortunately no longer exists. Um, Another cool feature of the pass is Amsden actually holds the South Dakota state record muskie. It is 40 pounds, 0 ounces, and it was caught by a local fisherman by the name of Daniel Kruger. I actually know him. He's a very cool person. It's a very cool story to hear him pulling in that fish. I mean, it's a crazy big fish, especially being the South Dakota state record. Other large species of fish were pulled out of this lake. I actually have some visionary thing here for you. I pulled this walleye out of Amsden. It is 28 inches, and it weighs a good 7.5 pounds, so it's a proud angler walleye. I can barely get it on the camera, as you can see. Nice fish, though. Some other big fish that I know that came out of there, crappie. I caught this one back in 1998. This fish was 2 ounces off the state record, so there's plenty of big fish in this lake that anglers have the opportunity to catch them. Luckily, I was able to catch some of those back in its earlier years. There is a myth and I've heard this story a lot, that there is a 80-pound muskie within this lake. I don't know whether it's true or not. Some people say they've claimed to had it on their line and lost it. Others have claimed that Game Fish and Parks nets the fish every year, milks the eggs out of it, takes the eggs back to the hatchery, lets them, develop into fingerling, and then re-release them into other lakes. It's a myth. I've never seen proof. I've heard it a lot, though. It is a very, very large story. Another thing is the west side of the lake used to be closed down in the past due to the local landowner. He didn't want people going on his land, and you would have to go through his land, through his cattle, to get to the lake on the west side. So he had it shut down for a long time, which really limited fishing opportunities as well. And the last thing about the past of Amsoin is the muskie and walleye are the only fish that have been stocked in the last 15 years, which is a head scratcher to me, but it is a little bit of history that I wanted to list. And for the present future day Amsoin, this is the information that I would like to inform you about. It is still fished yearly, but it's not to the extent it used to be. It used to be fished a lot more. Nowadays, maybe a couple people a summer will get out there. Very rarely. Winter fishing, it does produce a couple more fishermen, but it's still very, very small compared to these bigger lakes in South Dakota. Camping has become the primary activity. Fishing is just lost. It's just wore off. In the campgrounds, they've seen a lack of upkeep as well. It's just, they're not what they used to be. Tall grass, mow it only a couple times a year, so most of the year you're stuck with long grass and ticks and bugs and just stuff that could be fixed. Fishing is very slow nowadays too. I've heard anglers go out there and not catch a fish for a few days. It can be that bad, which that's disappointing really for a lake with such history. There's also an abundance of bait fish nowadays, which is like minnows or worms, stuff like that. People end up pouring their bait fish in when they're done fishing, not realizing that these bait fish will actually reproduce within your lake, and next thing you know, you're feeding the fish in there and they're not hungry for your bait. Not necessarily a bad thing, but just something about the present day. Another thing is the aquatic plant life. It could become a problem. It's not a major issue now, but it's something to look forward to. The shores are covered in moss. It's very hard to launch a boat at certain times in the summer due to this moss. It can also cause problems for the fish. Certain fish that need to spawn within 5 foot of water that can't due to the moss. There's problems that could be presented, but so far not a major issue. One side of the lake that was shut down, it is now reopened. The west side you can now fish, which is awesome. It's one of my favorite sides to fish, so that's a cool little piece of information. And the last thing about the present is, Amsoin has plenty of opportunity to be a fisherman's dream. It's just going to take some actions in Game Fish and Park involvement to get it there. So that's kind of the past, present, and future of Amsoin. And then we'll go to Piggers Lake. Piggers was created in 1935. Same thing, it was a WPA program. It was used to hold back water for farmland, so very similar to Amsoin. It offered a large variety of fish with plenty of good angling opportunities. It's a very well-known lake. It was a man-made lake as well as like Amsoin, so fishing was very slow kind of the beginning years, but still well-known for it. It was fished religiously by locals in its early years, so very, very big-time fishing lake. The lake used to have very large fish for proud anglers. I actually have a couple right here. This perch right here, this one, was a proud angler pulled out of there back in, I think it was 1995. I was a couple years old. I guess I pulled it on a little rod. I don't remember, but nice fish. This was also another lake that was funded by Feather and Fin. They would hold tournaments and help reproduce the lake, which was an awesome thing. One of the problems in the past was carp found their way into Piggers and started causing a lot of problems with the aquatic plant life. They would eat the plants, and this would result in a lack of oxygen in the water during the winter, which would lead to winter kill. The lack of oxygen for fish kills their species, most of them. It's easily Piggers' #1 problem. Winter kill is a big issue. And one of the worst things about the past that I've noticed is the last known stocking reports were largemouth bass back in 2005 and 2008. Well, largemouth bass ain't made to be in a lake like this. They've already all died off. I mean, I've seen them on the shores back in about 2009. Those years when they stocked it, all the fish were dead on shore. I mean, they didn't survive. So that's kind of the past of piggers. The present of piggers, it's no longer a lake fished by locals. Nobody fishes it. The lake has very few anglers pursue its waters. I mean, I don't see anyone fish it, let alone, I don't even know if birds fish it, you know, like pelicans, seagulls, those type of things. I don't ever see them even out there. The invasive aquatic plants, they've really caused a huge issue. Low oxygen levels, like I discussed with winterkill. Fish that don't need a lot of oxygen have overpopulated the lake, so bullhead, pretty much bullhead, that's all that's left in there, which is not a good species as they're hurting other species. The shoreline's impossible to fish. Way too many aquatic plants, you can't fish it. You know, Game Fish and Parks offers like no information about this lake. They have no lake surveys. They're not doing anything with this lake, and it's sad. You know, without an intervention, piggers will become a body of standing water. That's all it has for a future right now. The last thing I'd like to discuss is how to improve these lakes. With Amazon, I have this is my plan. I mean, it could be discussed, you know, in bigger terms, but my plan would be first is to reduce muskie stocking and increase panfish stocking. This would help. They stock muskie every year. Muskie's like one of the major freshwater predators. So if you stock less muskie and put more panfish in, you're offering more food for the muskie that are already in there, but you're also offering panfish the ability to thrive. Panfish is the #1 fish that fishermen look to go for. So with more panfish, you're creating more opportunities for fishermen to come there. I think they should take note of aquatic plants and have a plan for the future with these aquatic plants. You know, how to control it, make sure it doesn't get out of hand like it did with piggers. I think holding a non-profit tournament every year, kind of like what Feather and Fin did, and raise money for the lake would be an awesome thing. I would love to kind of host that, and we could make money for the lake and stock new fish. That's a great thing, I think, would be. Bringing back Feather and Fin would be an awesome thing, too. I think that would take a lot of work, but that is one thing I would really like to do. I think we should introduce new ways to improve the campgrounds at Amazon. This would offer, you know, more families to come camp, and then if the lake is better for fishing, you're going to offer more fishing opportunities for the campers. You know, better overall experience. And then the last thing I think you should do is promote camping to the point where the park can generate more money due to camping. I mean, if you promote it and say, you know, we're restocking it, we're cleaning up the campgrounds, it makes people want to go there, you know. All right, and then for the last one, how to improve Piggers Lake, and this was going to be the hardest one. With piggers, you need to find the source of the winterkill, whether it be invasive species or carp. That's the first step. The second step would be to conduct Game Fish and Parks lake surveys. They don't conduct them ever. I mean, you could conduct it once a year or every 3 years, but conducting the lake survey will tell us a lot of information from what species of fish are in there. They can tell what the fish are doing after they stock them, if they're surviving, if they're dying. Very important. The last thing, or one of the things I would do is form a plan of main species of fish you wanted in the lake, and then stock accordingly. So if you want walleye, then stock walleye, and if you want food for the walleye, you would stock the species that the walleye preyed on. So that would be a good way to help up the walleye balance and also give them a good source of proteins and foods, you know, to grow big. I would consider turning it into a trophy lake, kind of with what I just said. Another example on those lines would be if you want to turn it into a northern lake, like a northern pike lake, then stock it with northern and stock it with perch. Northern like to prey on perch. It gives them plenty of opportunity to grow big, and you could promote it as a trophy lake, so people who want to catch northern will go there. You know, that's the last thing that I really could say that would improve piggers. So those are a couple ideas that could help improve these lakes. So, you know, in conclusion to this, I think Amazon piggers have the opportunity to support the future of, you know, my fishing, my age group fishing, and the future generations of fishing, you know, for years to come as well. And the only way this will happen is if Game Fish and Parks becomes aware of the things I've said, and they do something about the things I said. And that's the most important part, just to do something about it. So the gist of my speech in a couple sentences would be, Amazon and Piggers are two lakes that offer beautiful scenery and fishing opportunities, but the lack of Game Fish and Parks involvement are hurting their futures. So So I thank you for listening to my speech. I hope you learned a thing or two about my local lakes, and hopefully something can be done about these. Thank you.